The aspect of God as our creator is really important because as a human being, you're a specific kind of creature. You're a specific type of thing. You're different from an angel and you're different from other animals, and that determines what is good for you. So now we are touching onto a very important aspect in the times that we are living in is also freedom. Freedom is not devoid from what is good for us. To be free doesn't mean to do otherwise, to be able to do whatever. You are not free to jump off the building because you're human. The freedoms that you have are limited. You don't get to choose what your good is. You just choose whether you follow it or not. We can't talk about love and we can't talk about freedom if we don't talk about what is good. And our society wants to throw out that part. God's laws and what He prescribes to us in the salvation He offers us. It's not Him sort of arbitrarily imposing things on us. He knows what we are, and so He knows what is good for us. And when He says heterosexual monogamous marriage, this is how you flourish, then we find that to be psychologically, emotionally, biologically the true good for us. Now, can we choose to live contrary to that? We can, but it has consequences. It's when words are taken, words that are commonly used and have always been understood in a certain way, and then the definition has changed according to a specific ideology or a specific agenda. Take the word love, right?
Yeah. Love is love.
Love is love, yes. And so now when you come and you say, well, love means actually not this, they'll say, well, no. And so you use the term thinking you know what it means. You see love on the bumper sticker, you see love on the flag, you see love wherever, and you think, well, as somebody who's for love, I should be buying into this, or I should be part of this, or
I should be an ally.
The term has been redefined, and in the process of going along, you're buying into an agenda, you're buying into an ideology without knowing. For the hijacking, there's a ransom, right? The ransom is to acquiesce. You better agree with this, otherwise you're the bigot, you're the hater. This idea that it takes a village to raise a child, it's wrong. It takes a family to raise a village. The reason why we need villages to raise our children is because the family's failing.
Nel Brace, welcome to the In Hindsight BOLDCAST. Thanks for joining me today.
Thanks, Heinz. Privilege.
I'm so glad you're here, all the way from Potch.
Yes.
I recently had the privilege of speaking to your husband, Simon, and Simon says that I should speak to you, so now you're here today. I'm doing what Simon says.
Despite the game, you shouldn't always do what Simon says, but hopefully this one works out well for you.
Yeah, how does that work in your marriage? Do you play Simon says?
I have to do it all, yeah.
Oh, it's amazing. Anyway, I'm so glad you're here, and I'm excited for our conversation today. You are obviously married to Simon. You guys have 5 children, a little army of your own, and I know you're homeschooling right now, but you are a trained teacher. You did that for a while, but you also have some other passions, things that you love to bring across. So we're going to talk about all of that. To start us off, I'd like to hear your version of meeting Simon and starting your family. I'd love to start there, and then we'll take things from there.
All right, yeah, there are 2 different versions. So like to set the record straight.
There normally is, yeah.
Yeah. So I was living and teaching in London when I met Simon. We were part of a ministry to Muslims at Hyde Park Christian Fellowship, doing evangelism on a Sunday afternoon at Speaker's Corner.
Okay.
And it was really where I cut my teeth in Christian apologetics. It's very necessary when you interact with Muslims, evangelistically, especially at Speaker's Corner. And we were privileged to be mentored and discipled by, I think, one of the greatest minds in terms of Islamic evangelism, J. Smith, back then. So we were part of a ministry of really people from all over the world with a passion for sharing the gospel with
This
Muslims.
is going to interject there.
Yeah, sure.
What made you want to do that in the first place?
Right, so I am growing up in South Africa. My dad was very involved with the then CSV. There were a lot of outreach opportunities through that, and I became aware of Muslims and the 1040 window and missions to them. And that it was really sort of a neglected part of the Christian evangelistic outreach for obvious reasons. It's difficult. Those are some of the more dangerous places to go as well if you're a Christian missionary. and read up a lot about it, had a passion for it, and then during my time in London, tried to be involved with work that involved ministry to Muslims, and was part of an outreach where we handed out some New Testaments on the streets of London. It's always, during the summer, a gathering place for people from all over the Saudi Peninsula. They come for a bit of relief from the heat.
Wow.
And so we would hand out Arabic New Testaments, and it was in those conversations that I realized I needed some answers. Some objections were made to the Christian faith. Muslim apologists are well trained in the polemics against Christianity. So we interacted with some of them on the streets, and I realized I couldn't fulfill the 1 Peter 3:15 mandate. I wasn't prepared really to give the answers for the hope. Fortunately, Jay Smith comes along halfway through the week and does a little bit of a respite and does apologetics training, and that's where I realized I need this. I need this in terms of ministry, but I also need it for myself. There's a bolstering of my faith that was needed. I'm quite a sort of analytic type of person. I want things to make sense logically, and it was a relief to find that you can have that within Christianity. I think I was missing that for a while. So it also coincided with teaching religious education in the British school system and being involved in teaching philosophy of religion and ethics to some older students, where I came across for the first time some of the intellectual history of the faith and the known apologists or philosophers who are wonderful Christian minds. So all of that coincided for me, and then Simon happened as well at the same time with a shared passion. So the Lord was good to us. So we were involved in that ministry.
Okay. So I mean, behind the fact that you wanted to share the gospel, learned that it's not that simple. When you speak to certain people, you actually have to, like you said, bolster your faith. I like that term. But behind that was a young lady who had encountered Jesus already. You believed. What was, maybe take us back to that. How did you come to the faith, and with the culture that you grew up in, that shaped your belief system at the time, which was then challenged? So maybe take us back to that moment and explain a bit about that, because I think a lot of people that listen to this, I mean, me and others, have a similar background.
So I had the privilege of growing up in a wonderful Christian home. My parents were both true believers, grew up in a traditional Dutch Reformed church, but with they were an impassioned community, and we had good teaching in Sunday school. And I remember praying the sinner's prayer at the age of 7. My dad guided me through that. And it was a true conversion. There've been, ups and downs since, but I've never been, I've never questioned whether that moment was real.
Okay.
That's when the Lord saved me. And so
extra special because it was your own father.
Yes, that was precious. I remember it very clearly. And so since then, it's been the long and sometimes hard road of sanctification, and realizing, I think in round about high school, the realization that this is, I can't keep this to myself. We are called to be disciples, but then also messengers of Christ. And so, like I said, that was during the sort of Youth for Christ, CSV uprisings, the big Louis Brits concerts, and the Love Southern Africa outreaches.
Man, I remember those. 96.
Yeah.
I was at the 96 one. We had our Jesus Freak t-shirts on. It was big, eh?
Yes, and we went on our marches to Parliament and those sorts of things, and went on a couple of outreaches. And I think I asked the Lord to show me, but also just realized, well, you sort of go where the need is, right? And so Islam seemed to me at that stage where it was. I was set for a while on being a missionary to Turkey, and then
how did your parents feel about that at the time?
They were very gracious about it. What they really thought, I don't know. They didn't say much, so they let me be and encouraged me as they could. I think they had their concerns because this was different. But they never discouraged me
Right.
from it. Yeah, so I think they were.
Awesome.
Yeah, we were all growing
and
together.
and in the time we were, students, the thing to do was to go to London.
Yes.
And so and you had your degree, I'm assuming, in education. So some doors could open up.
Yeah, there were the working holiday visas, and there was a teachers' crisis in the UK at that stage. So I actually managed to land a job. Just a phone interview, I think it was, and went and worked back some debt that I had after finishing my studies. And I think it's there that it was teaching in those secular British schools, and then the interaction at Speaker's Corner that I realized, hang on a sec, there's more than just telling people that Jesus loves them and sharing my personal testimony. They've got real questions.
Yeah.
And it's just
that need real answers.
Yep.
Intellectual answers.
Intellectual answers. And when Jesus summarizes the law, he says that we've got to love God with our hearts, but also with our minds. And the question was, well, what does that look like?
Sure.
How do I love God with my mind? And it's disingenuous to bring a faith before people, but not to be able to or willing at least to deal with the objections that they have. Removing those objections is not what saves. It's removing the smoke screens before they encounter Jesus, and we should be able to do that. Yeah.
I remember, what I experienced was being in a bubble of the culture that I was in, and bubble meaning pretty much everyone has some idea of what Christianity is, and that if they were asked, they would say, I'm a Christian.
Yeah.
And so they would say, I believe in God, I believe in Jesus. And doesn't necessarily mean they had a relationship with him, but they have, enough of a foundation. That's the culture they grew up in. And, when I was shoved into the world, the entertainment world, and I was traveling with someone who was just given to me as my agent, who had a completely different worldview, and she started asking questions, and my mind was going, these are good questions.
Yes.
And at the same time going, how do you not know?
Yeah.
Because everyone should know this. And I realized, oh my word. And I had the same moment in that, I was on a plane going for a show somewhere, and she asked me questions, and I went, oh my word, I can't explain the hope that I have.
Yeah.
That's terrible.
Yeah.
And she had really good questions. And, she wasn't a Muslim, but it was a similar situation. So, I think we all should have those moments and go, man, what should I do about that? So your journey on that was realizing it. And then how did you go about to educate yourself?
Right, so it was a combination of factors. This ministry that we were involved in at Speaker's Corner, Jay Smith is a wonderful apologist, and then obviously some of the questions that Muslims ask regarding, for example, the reliability of the scriptures. Those are general questions. A Muslim's going to ask them. An agnostic or an atheist will ask them too.
What happens if you ask them the same question about the Quran? Like, how legitimate is that? Does that come up?
They
have an answer for that.
I think. Not many Christians ask that question because they either, have never read the Quran.
They don't know the answer to the question.
They know the answer to the question, and you shouldn't ask. Obviously, if you're interested, you should. I don't think it's a question that Muslims have considered.
So more is like us on the back foot having to explain. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, most I say, obviously there are Muslim scholars and people who have considered it. I say Muslims don't consider, but you're sort of run of the mill person you meet on the street, I think, has not necessarily asked the same questions of their own faith. Sort of like you and I were caught out when people asked us questions about our faith.
So, maybe we should pause there for a second. What can we do as, Christians today, having children, being part of communities? How can we and our churches be more effective in giving your general person in your church a basic apologetic background? Is that possible, or is it too high intellectual? Is there a way?
Well, it shouldn't be. If Paul says we should all be able to give the answer, I think it starts with the willingness,
yes,
and an understanding
and
that
awareness.
Like
this should be something we should think about.
Yes, yes, and that's why it's. Perhaps, in a way, the Lord is being gracious to us by bursting that bubble a little bit, and showing us up for being intellectually lazy.
I agree.
And forcing us to do the thinking work. It should be part and parcel of what we do as Christians in the church. And I think there are reasons for why the church has neglected this. I remember feeling really disenfranchised when I discovered it. I thought, man, there's this whole discipline which has been part of the church really from the beginning. You have very early apologists. Paul, when you start reading, his epistles from sort of an apologetics angle, you see it everywhere, but it was just never pointed out and taught. And I think there are sort of zeitgeist reasons for that. We grew up in a time, and maybe we're still sort of in the tail end of that, although I don't think it will last much longer, where Christianity and going to church was very subjective. It was about your personal experience, because that's something that nobody can take from you intellectually, right? So you can't have my experience, I've had it, and that's all a function of a philosophical shift that happened, and said where it was philosophy and epistemology specifically started claiming we can't know reality objectively, we're only stuck in the subjective. And so then when the queries come, it's not so necessary to answer them because I have my subjective experience. But I don't think that's biblical, and I think we fell into that trap. So the church was caught in my subjective experience is enough, but it gives you something to say to the world out there, but it's limited.
And I think if I may add this, you can say if you agree or not, but I mean, my experience getting saved around 16, while still being in the Dutch Reformed milieu, but then desperately looking for more, realizing there must be something more, asking questions, not getting answers, then looking outside, finding the sort of super charismatic movement, thinking this looks great, and going into that space for a while. Also to realize that some of it's great, but then there's a lot of things that are not being answered, and some questions when you ask it, you just get the answer. Well, you must just believe, and something inside of you goes, okay, I hear you, but there's faith in Jesus, but then there's also, we need to be able to explain what we believe and why we believe it. And it took, personally for me, a long time to be okay with that, because I also felt like I just have to believe. And but there's that why thing.
I think it's a misunderstanding of faith, right? Faith is trust, essentially, but you trust in what you know. So when we're told that the faith like a child, it's not reckless in the sense of I'm just going to do it. It's sort of that leap of faith. There's a famous Indiana Jones clip where he stands on the edge of the cliff and there's nothing there, and he has to take the first step, and then the ledge appears that he walks on. You remember that one? I think many people think faith is like that, but it's not. The ledge is there, and you can know it, and it's once you know it's there, it's a reasonable thing to do that you step out on it, right? That child who jumps into the swimming pool with abandonment does it because he knows his father.
That's good.
And so faith like a child in terms of the total abandonment once you know, but they know. And so I think we sometimes have a misconstrued view of faith. It's not believing despite the fact of not having evidence. It's we believe because we do. That's faith is trust based on what you know.
I think it's good to probably separate between the faith that there is a God, that his son is Jesus Christ, that he actually did die on a cross, rose from the dead, and he ascended to heaven. Those are the cool thing for me about that is that those are verifiable facts, which I never thought about in my young Christian days. But that's one of the things that I think is so incredible. So I would separate faith that you can believe in facts about God, versus I'm now in a relationship with God. I sense the Holy Spirit lead me in a direction. I don't understand it completely. I don't necessarily know what the next practical step is, but I'm just going to trust him and take a step of faith. That's different for me. That's relational faith while you're a Christian.
Yeah, but they are connected, right?
Okay.
Because
You trust God that He knows what He's doing?
Because there was a resurrection.
Yes.
Because those things are demonstrably true. Then so faith is putting trust in that authority. So you've verified God as an authority, right? What he says is in the scriptures, it's good and true, even in the historical sense, in terms of what Jesus came and did for us as we celebrated this Easter. It's a real living hope. And so because of that, it's sort of like Simon, the carpenter, is checking out a chair, right? Yeah. So you take the chair and you turn it upside down, you verify the joints seem sturdy, and you can say, there is a good chair. And then they're sitting on the chair, which is that second part of now you're trusting implicitly, right? So God is good, what He says is true, and therefore I will follow Him wherever He leads me, even though I don't see. So
what do you make of that verse that says, faith is it's not seeing, it's believing. So what do we do with that?
Yeah, well,
faith is the evidence of things not seen, and the substance of things hoped for.
Yeah, so there is, but that is based on the things that we have seen.
Yes.
So the writer of Hebrews has seen certain things, and because of that, he trusts now for the unseen, for that which is promised to us.
That's cool. I haven't thought about it that way. That makes sense. Yeah, because you have the foundational faith, everything else flows from that. Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, so even that trust to places where we don't know is based on on the faith and the knowledge of the one who leads us.
Yeah.
So
Okay. Was that your experience in growing in this area in your life?
Yes, I think so. I think the more as I found intellectual fulfillment in the faith, it really ended up deepening my personal relationship with God.
That's
right?
awesome.
It's like getting to know the Father that you have as you sort of grow, learn more about Him, and then trust Him even more. So yes, that's for me. That's been two parts, because that's what we like, right? Our nature, we are beings of intellect and emotion. There's a mind and a heart, and it's both and, because it can be overly emotional with no reason, and that doesn't last, especially when trials and suffering and tribulation comes along. That's not grounded, so that becomes up and down, and then there's the intellectual part, which is the grounding in truth. Now that can become stocky and stale if that's all that we do. So there's a balance to be found there, I think, but it has to be both. If it's only one of the two, then it's impoverished, which is not good.
That's amazing, because I was thinking about it recently again. You said earlier, faith like a child, and some people take that to certain conclusions that I don't always agree with. But, faith like a child, yes. But then you read the book of Acts, you read the book of Hebrews, you read Paul's writings to the Corinthians, and there's a level of intellectual input and understanding and knowledge and processing and meditating that's needed. And the Bible, we're studying the book of Hebrews at the moment at church, and he specifically says, I'd like to share more with you, but you're not ready, because you're still stuck on, you haven't even moved past the basic fundamentals of this and this and this. You should be teachers, but you're still babies on milk. So there's a call to grow in maturity and understanding. And I think that's something that probably is too lacking in general in the church. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I think so. I think part of the reason is it's hard work. You have to think, to read, to consider, to dialogue, to discuss. That's hard work. It's not always comfortable.
No. Any relationship.
Yep.
It's work. Yeah. I just think if you really, if you love someone, you want to spend time with them. And for me, there's that aspect. Is definitely, I'll be honest, there are times when it's like, I just have to get to the Bible and spend time with Jesus. I may not feel like it, but I know it's necessary. And because I love Him, and I know He loves me, and I know I need him more than he needs me.
Yeah.
You press in, and then, but then when you make that decision, something changes and it flows. But it is there's an aspect of what you say now. There's effort for the relationship to grow, right?
Yes, and that effort is not just on a emotional, relational level. It's also on an intellectual level.
Yeah.
So we can't. This is another Simonism. My life is littered with Simonisms, but they always say you can't have a big heart for Jesus and a small and feeble mind.
Wow.
Fit bodies, fat minds, type of thing.
Sure.
As Christians, we need to be thinkers.
What's the balance, do you think?
Love
him with your whole heart, whole mind.
Yeah, so it's
how do we balance that out?
It's all of it. I think maybe your personal tendencies come in here. So those of us who are more intellectual do that easily.
Yeah,
we've got to
up our game.
Sure we've got to up our game maybe more on the relational side of things. Remember, this is not just a theology textbook. And those of us who are more emotional and want to say, well, we live in this experience, well, maybe we need to make a point of sometimes also just doing the reading, setting out the argument, and making sure we understand. And so I think
because
maybe
personality types
aspect.
Personality types play a role, and temperaments, and there's the healthy you that certain things are just the way they are. Obviously there's the unhealthy you that needs to change, as Jesus impacts your life. But it's a process. I think one of the places where we all grow the most is in our marriages. It's like a mirror, especially for the husbands. Like, okay,
both ways.
Yeah. Okay. So, I mean, we keep kind of going on tangents, but I love the principles that you highlight as we're speaking. So let's get back to the storyline. You're now, learning about apologetics. You're engaging with Muslims. You're meeting Simon. To bring us back into the storyline there.
So Simon at that stage had already started looking into studying apologetics formally.
Okay.
There were very few institutions where you could do that, and he ended up at Southern Evangelical Seminary in North Carolina.
Okay.
That put a bit of a hold on things for us. By that time, we were dating. It would really sort of been a friendship within this
phase. We were kind of
but with the specter of him, possibly going to America, and I was not at the point where I could leave the UK then.
All right.
And so he went ahead, started studying. We kept in touch, and then eventually I could go, and we both completed our degrees there, got married about a year after I joined him. And then the first...
So you got married in the States?
No, well, we were living in the States at that time, but we had our summer break, so we got married in the winter here.
Okay.
Came back, brought a couple of Americans with us for the celebration, but got married,
All
most
right.
of the family was here.
Yeah, that's special. Oh, awesome. Okay, and so now you're married. Where did you decide to settle in the beginning?
So we had to go back to the US. We were both still studying, finishing off degrees, and then Simon was employed as the director of missions at SES after he completed his studies. By that time, we had 2 kids already, and so I continued taking a few classes for as long as I could manage it, and then stopped and I was at home with the kids while he worked for the seminary. And in that time, Ratio Christi as a ministry was birthed through helping some students at a local campus with some apologetics, and that became overnight, really. Simon would say, on the back of a pack of cigarettes, it became a thing. We didn't have a budget, we didn't really have a ministry strategy, but these students were just on campus really in need of apologetics training.
Wow.
For their own faith and for having worthwhile conversations with professors and other students. So it just caught on like wildfire without anything that we did. The Lord graciously provided apologists in the various different areas where students would ask. It was uncanny sometimes the way students would call and say, we're at such and such university, we would like to start a club, who can help us? And then within a couple of days somebody would call and say, I just finished my apologetics degree from Biola, how can I help? And they would be in the
That's
vicinity. And it
amazing.
would just be a match. So, yeah.
It sounds like the hand of God. Yeah.
Simon was part of that, which was exciting. That's very sort of applicable ministry. The stuff we taught them today applied to their classes tomorrow. So
wow.
And that long story short is ultimately what brought us back to South Africa as well.
So if you looking at your experience, initially you guys specifically had a heart to connect with Muslims about their faith. Was that also like fortuitous in the way that if you're prepared to speak to a Muslim, you're also prepared to speak to an atheist, an agnostic, a Hindu, or was it a very specific field and you kind of have to train for all the others as well?
There are specific aspects to it, yeah. So
okay.
no, but there are some general things that are the same in terms of the basic arguments for the Christian faith. With the Muslim, you won't need to argue for the existence of God. They agree on that. They agree that Jesus existed historically. So those are different issues. So that maybe it's more the discussion with the Muslim is more doctrinal in a sense. Right? So there are different aspects, but I think what it helped us to realize was that conversations can be had, and arguments in the good sense of that word should be had.
Yeah. Healthy debating.
Yeah, and arguments in the sense of, premise, conclusion. We move forward in our thinking, that beautiful, rational, human thing that we do. And that's actually part and parcel of the evangelistic endeavor, is having those sorts of conversations. Certainly we are indebted to that ministry for having taught us that and given us exposure to that. I think if we could decide where we want to grow old, end up being, some form of Muslim ministry would probably be it. But for now, we're on campus.
That's amazing. And do you have one or two testimonies about engaging with a Muslim where their lives were truly impacted and changed?
Yeah, so Speaker's Corner itself was a tough place.
I can imagine.
Yeah, so
it's almost a battleground.
It is. Oh, absolutely. And most of the people we interact with were trained Islamic apologists, if you want. Then, but you always approach those conversations with an awareness of the people standing around you, and just so there was a lot of what I think Paul would refer to as planting the seed, but you didn't necessarily see the growth. For me, I had a email interaction with a young Muslim lady over time. It was 6-7 months of just constant bombardment of email questions that I answered, and then heard nothing for a while, and then out of the blue, maybe about a year or two later, received an email where she just testified and said that she'd come to faith, thanked me for that part of the journey, and talked a little bit about what it entailed for her now. That was precious. The Lord is gracious in giving us those little glimpses of how beautiful. The work is done. But I think maybe most of the work that was done there was within us. It was tough. It was a tough place to go every Sunday. I never went there feeling like I wanted to. So it was a challenge to the flesh. It was, absolutely. It's not a comfort zone. No. And so I learned that you go there without necessarily feeling as if this is a fun thing to do. You got to be prayed up. You got to understand the armor of God. Yes. Yeah. And be ready for confrontation. Be comfortable with confrontation. Be comfortable with not being liked. Be comfortable with a little bit of aggression, and to sort of stand your ground in that. We learned a lot in terms of and also effective ministry. There are better and worse ways of saying things. Better and worse analogies to use. So we learned. You learn as you go. And I'm sure because of the Muslim culture that, they probably, if it's a man speaking to you, they probably get more upset because you're a woman. Like, just in principle, that's already a barrier, right? That is, although Speaker's Corner is a little bit unique. Some of those boundaries are dropped for the sake of the conversation. So it
Interesting,
was,
okay.
it was unique. It was always sort of looming there, and you had to be aware of it. But I think in terms of the ability to have conversations, there was a little bit more freedom than you'd have typically in a
To your
setting.
knowledge, is Speaker's Corner still going? Because in the current environment, it doesn't feel like there's much free speech left in the UK.
It's going, as far as
Okay.
I know. The
All right.
most of the conversation, I think, is still Christian-Muslim debate. There are still faithful believers who are there every
Going.
Sunday. Some of the folk we know from before.
All right.
Yeah, so I would encourage people to, if you're in London on a Sunday, go look it up, Hyde Park, on the one corner there.
Yeah, cool.
It's vibrant. We'll use that word.
Okay, cool. Well, we're actually going to go to London soon. I'm going to try and check it out.
Good place to go.
Yeah, if there's time, I hope we can have time. Maybe I won't be ready to engage. I'll just listen. I'm still in training, I think. But yeah, that's amazing. Sure. So nowadays you've got something that you're very specifically passionate about, going around doing a talk. I mean, as you said off camera, you have a few jobs. You homeschool your children, your 5 children. You've got Simon full time. But you also, when you have an opportunity, you share a talk about truth and love. And please elaborate a bit on that. I'd like to ask you some questions about that.
Okay. So this is a little talk that I was asked to prepare really it was part of a bigger set of talks that we did on the family. And we felt that these are 2 important terms that had to be discussed before we even talked about all the other aspects of
Which
marriage,
2
raising
terms?
children, truth and love.
Truth and love. Okay.
Yeah. So the talk is based...
Sorry, I thought you meant marriage and something else.
No. Truth and love. And so the talk is based on Ephesians 4, verse 15, where Paul says that in the mature church believers, they're able to speak the truth in love. But the question is, what exactly does that mean? And so the
what did Paul mean? And what do those words mean? Yeah, that's good.
What do those words mean?
Yeah.
How do we do that? Because I think we live in an age where those terms, the definitions for those terms have been distorted. In fact, I think we live in an age where we're not even sure whether we can give any definitions, whether definitions can be given. So yes, the aim of the talk is just to redefine those terms, to look at what it means, what is truth, and then what is love, and how do those 2 things intersect. I think for me, part of the reason why I like giving the talk is it's understanding those terms has influenced profoundly the way I think, and also the way I am raising my children, and my relationships just in general. So it's had a powerful impact on my life and an understanding of those terms, a more objective understanding where I'm not sort of grasping around thinking, oh, what exactly do I mean when I say that? And that's been precious to me. So that's part of the reason why I enjoy giving it. Yeah.
So you're keeping us in suspense. What exactly was your revelation that you first, obviously, I'm assuming, had personally, and then felt like, listen, we need to share this? Did you have a journey, shared it with your husband, or did you guys kind of come to the same conclusion at the same time, or
no,
how did it come about?
It's much more boring than that. It was a simple seminary education.
Okay.
I think in which I, for the first time, was challenged to consider the meaning of the word truth, the definition. So that's the way I start to talk off. I'll ask people to put down a definition. What is truth?
Yeah, what do you think it is?
And you're not allowed to write Jesus. Okay?
Good.
Jesus says he is the truth. But unless you can give me a theological explanation for why it is that he can claim that, you can't put down Jesus.
Okay.
It's like the little Sunday school kid who, the Sunday school teacher held up the picture of the squirrel, said, "What is this?" He said, "I know the answer is Jesus, but that sure looks like a squirrel." Right? So can't just use Jesus. And then also the same with love. How would you define love? And you're not allowed to write down anything from 1 Corinthians 13, because that's the outflow. Those are the characteristics of love. But what is the definition? of the word. And I think
has anyone ever gotten it right? At your talk?
Yes.
Okay,
yes,
okay.
Fortunately, I don't ask.
All right.
I think
it's more for them to just start thinking.
For them to realize maybe I don't know. Maybe I've never really thought about the definition, because these are words that we use commonly within the Christian faith, and we are supposed to be ambassadors of truth and practitioners of love, and so the question is, what does that mean? So then I proceed to try and define what truth is, and whether is there even such a thing. So we live in this crazy postmodern era where to say that you know the truth is seen as arrogant, it's seen as exclusivist, you're an exclusivist, or it's seen as prideful to claim that you know the truth. It's even seen in your more sort of maybe social justice circles as a power play to say that sometimes that somehow
is that
you
because,
know the truth.
Yeah, sorry. Is that because the side that would get upset believe there's no such thing as objective truth or objective reality? Is that part of that reason? Yeah.
So it's the relativistic idea that all truth is ultimately subjective. We're stuck in our unique perspectives and our unique experiences of things. So you've got your point of view, I've got my point of view, and so who am I to say, or who are you to say?
As I remember, my one pastor said to me, if someone ever says to you there's no such thing as absolute truth, you must ask them, are you absolutely sure or relatively sure?
Yeah, so see, that's the absolute truth claim. So if truth is it's a fundamental, it's a first principle. You can't deny it because in the process of denying it, you're using it.
Yeah, because you're saying my truth statement, or my truth statement is the truth statement. Yeah. Wow.
So classically understood, the definition of truth, a statement or a belief is true if it corresponds to reality.
Okay.
So Aristotle had a neat way of saying it, to say of what is that it is, and to say of what is not that it is not.
Okay, so is that the definition that you start with in your talk, or is that just you refer to that?
That's I refer to that, but I think he's right.
Okay,
right, because it's not it. That is our human experience. So think about your children as you raise them up.
Yeah.
When you say to them, "Tell me the truth," what do you want them to say to you? You want that what they say to you corresponds to what really happened, right? What the facts are.
That's one of the most frustrating conversations to have with my 5-year-old currently. Because I can see that she did something she wasn't supposed to do. And I say, Alana, did you do that? And she goes, no.
Right.
And you're like, tell me the truth. It's exactly that. You have these conversations. And now you're trying to teach her the value of truth. And that for our relationship to work well, this is important. Yeah. What's happening here right now?
But it's also
it's a process.
It's important for her humanity.
Yeah.
Right. Her mind is that our minds are the types of things that are they geared towards truth. Understanding reality is what we're after. And so
teach me as a parent. How's the best way to handle that situation? If you know she's lying, but you want to guide her to speaking the truth.
Yeah, so I would just maybe come up with a counterexample.
Okay.
Take something from her, and then when she says, "You just did that," you say, "No, that's not true." And she says, "But really, you did." Or Simon will often maybe this is similar, I think, because ultimately. The issue that we have with truth at the moment in our society is this idea that we can't know reality as it is. We just have our subjective experience of it. So we'll be driving and Simon will say, "Look, there's a chicken," and it'll be a cow. And they'll be like, "Oh, Daddy, you're joking. It's a cow. It's not a chicken." And you say, "Well, no, it's a chicken with a tail, but it's a chicken." And we'll start talking about really sort of what is a cow and what are the distinctives between the chicken and the cow. And you are right when you say this is a cow, and he is wrong when he says this is a chicken. It seems really basic and obvious.
But it's important for the kids to form their...
Until you get to a first-year philosophy course at university, and then you're told, no, it's all just your your personal experience, right?
Sure. I even remember hearing it a few times in high school, in something like science, even, that, everything you heard in primary school is wrong because they could only teach you so much. And I'm like, what? What was the point then? And you already grapple with like, so what is true, and it's subtle things like that to obviously the more important things. And I mean, one of the most famous moments from the story of Jesus is where he says he's the truth, and then Pontius Pilate says, what is truth?
Yeah, so Jesus, that's the conversation they have in John 18. And Jesus actually says, I've come for the purpose of revealing the truth.
Sorry, yes.
And Pilate says, well, what is truth? Which is so ironic.
Qui est veritas.
Yeah. So maybe to the point of Jesus being truth, why does Jesus make that claim? Right? Because he's according to Colossians 1, he's the author of reality, all things created through and for him.
Yeah, what a statement that is.
So when he says, I am the truth, it's because it's all grounded within his nature. And the beautiful expectation is for us to discover that and to know that. And that's part of the human existence. And so it's I think a deeply unsatisfying thing to live not thinking that you can know. And that's where our society's at. We're really adrift as far as this is concerned, because we've been told that it's arrogant or intolerant to say that you know the truth. It excludes other people. Well, truth is exclusive by definition, right? Everything that opposes it is false necessarily. So where do you want to live? How do you want to live in truth? Or we want to know truth. Nobody wants to live with a false idea.
So the second part of that talk is about love. So the scripture is the truth in love. So you start with the basic concepts of what is truth and what is love, I'm assuming, and then you bring it into the scripture, or how do you make...
Really I take it from the scripture. This is our command, right? Speak the truth in love. So Paul's analogy there is of being swayed by the waves of doctrine, false doctrine, false beliefs that are coming. So
that's think of the context.
That's the context. So the church in Ephesus, you are now a follower of the way, this new idea. And you have all sorts of waves crashing down on you. Your Roman parents or your Roman government or your Jewish family all saying, you're
nuts. You lost the plot.
What are you doing? And in that, you shouldn't be swayed by those ideas. You should speak the truth in love. So the analogy is sort of like a lighthouse, right? And Paul is talking about the mature church, the church grown up, is able to speak the truth in love despite the doctrinal waves, which seems to me is what we need in our society, right? A church that, despite all of the wavy ideas floating around in our society, can say, no, here we stand, we speak this truth, but we do it in a specific way. It's not just a sort of a hard philosophical drive. There's something more to it, and that's love. So,
but wouldn't he mean by the truth the gospel message, or do you think he was talking about the broader Christian life experience? What do you?
I don't think I would make too much of a distinction there, right? Because it's all part of the same reality. It's all part of the same. Now, obviously, some of the truths are more important for us to know. Salvation being, the most important one. But that, what about the rest of my life? And this road of sanctification now. Part of this road of sanctification, Romans 2's renewal of the mind, is conforming my mind to the truth.
Romans 12, yeah.
Sorry, Romans 12, verse 2. It's that there's an intellectual part to sanctification as well.
Renewing your mind. Yeah.
There's a sorting out of the false ideas that we hold, maybe about ethical issues. Are we going to know the truth in full. No, we won't, because we're finite. But that doesn't mean that we can't know anything. And so part of that sanctification journey, and part of the reason why as Christians we can do great science, we can do great history, we pursue any intellectual endeavor, is because all of reality is God's and we can know it. That's the invitation, right?
And I think we can, in essence, be the most creative people on the planet. We should be. And there has been. Some Christians have been some of the most creative, most scientific breakthroughs. I mean, history has shown this.
Yeah, I think I would argue that sort of the scientific revolution was based at least on Christian...
Yeah, exactly.
Christian principles.
Yeah.
Reality exists and we can know something about it. You need that to get the whole enterprise going.
Yeah. So the second leg of your talk is about love, and it's almost like Paul does say the two as if they should always work together to bring some form of harmony, because it's about communicating. You know, the believer communicating to the unbeliever or the world around them, you know, speak the truth, communicate the truth in love. So it's possible to communicate the truth not in love.
Yes.
Which I think we see a lot of that. And then it's also possible to say love and I'm being loving, but it's devoid of truth. And that also goes into a different path. And, you know, you've been saying that we live in a world where these things are challenging, and because we've got different mindsets and worldviews. But I think some of it's permeated into the church world, and we see some of that happening. So what do you think is the balance, and how should it be operating, or what is the message you have through your talk?
So maybe we should just take one step back and define love.
Yes.
Okay. So I've got to speak the truth. We've established now that truth is for my ideas.
So Nel, please define love for us.
I don't think it's that hard, actually. The living out of it now, that's a whole different ball game. But love is simply to continuously will and constantly seek the true good of the other. I'll say that again.
Yes, please.
To continuously will and constantly seek the true good of the other.
And you use the word true in there.
Yes.
Which is
okay. But I also use the word good.
Yes. Which also needs to be defined.
Crucially important, yeah. So that comes next. And so keep in mind that as Christians, of course, we're called to even love our enemies. So what does that look like? And number one, it implies there is an enemy, a person who is an enemy. Fellow human beings, and we must love them. Now what
does that mean?
What does
it
mean,
look like?
Right? Yeah. And so and this is a very important point. Love cannot be divorced from the good. Right? And so what is the good? Well, the good depends on the type of thing that you are. Okay, so a good pair of shoes. Yes.
Oh, you mean the type of thing is related to whether it's good or not?
Yes, because the good is determined by the end or the purpose of the thing. A thing is good insofar as it reaches its purpose. So
that it was created for.
The blunt knife is not a good knife.
Yes.
Right?
I hear you.
The shoes that cause you blisters, they're not good shoes. The eye that doesn't see is not a good eye, because the eye is the kind of thing that should see.
No,
right?
It's not fulfilling its purpose, its design. Yeah.
So the good of a human being is to fulfill his or her purpose. And now that brings you to another question. Right? What is the purpose?
Yes.
What is the purpose? And the scriptures answer that. Whatever you eat or drink, whatever you do it for the glory of God, right? So our purpose is to glorify God. The Westminster Confession says it nicely, to know God and to enjoy Him forever, to glorify Him, right? So, but how do you do that?
Yeah.
Do we all have to sit and sing glory songs all day? How do we glorify God?
Yeah, and in the spirit of definitions, we also need to now define God.
Yes. So,
but so
meaning
every word has a whole thing. that you have to define. It's
so
great.
so
It's
in
hectic.
this instance, I think the aspect of God as our creator is really important, because you as a human being, you're a specific kind of creature. You're a specific type of thing.
Yes.
All right, you're different from an angel, and you're different from other animals. You're a specific kind of being, and that determines what is good for you. So now we are touching onto a very important aspect in the times that we are living in, is also freedom, right? Human freedom. Freedom is not devoid from what is good for us. To be free doesn't mean to do otherwise, to be able to do whatever, okay? You are not free to jump off the building because you're human. Okay, the kind of thing that you are.
So freedom is almost linked to goodness in terms of purpose as well, because it's not good for you to fall off of a building. Is that what you're saying?
Yes, and that's why you can't choose to jump and fly, right? Because you are limited. The freedoms that you have are limited. This is strange to say. You don't get to choose what your good is. You just choose whether you follow it or not, whether you pursue it or not. That's where the human will comes in.
So you are actually defining freedom now as well, which is necessary for the conversation. Yeah,
we can't talk about love and we can't talk about freedom if we don't talk about what is good.
That's awesome.
And our society wants to throw out that part.
Yeah.
So when do I love somebody? When their true good is my concern. Right? And what is their true good? To glorify God. What does it mean to glorify God? For a human being, it means to be fully human in the way that He created you. How is the flower glorifying God, right? In its full flowerness, right? And it's the same for us. It's that flourishing, not in a sort of I'm happy and I have everything I want sense, but in that depth of soul, magnanimity of spirit, the deepness. It's Matthew 5, the Beatitudes. Blessed are those who, when we live like that, we flourish, we glorify God, right? That's goodness. So when I love someone, that is what I want for them. I will that for them continuously, and I work towards that good. So why do I punish my children when they steal? Because I love them. And I know that a life of dishonesty and a life of theft is not conducive to their flourishing.
That's good.
Living like that, they don't glorify God, and that will have consequences for them, because they're the type of creature who should be glorifying God. That's how they fulfill their purpose. And so why do I punish them? Because it annoys me, or because the neighbors are going to see, or whatever the case may be? No, because I love them. I want them to flourish, to glorify God in the things that they do. And that's how I love them.
That's a great point. And I had a revelation about this, and I've been trying to teach that ever since, that we need to probably revisit what we think is good in terms of what God thinks is good for us. Because I realize when there's certain things certain guardrails I put in my home, certain boundaries for my children and for us as a household, that not everyone think it's good for them, but we know it's good for them in the long run and for the household. So if I discipline you, you don't think it's good for you, but I know it's good for you because I know what good is supposed to be. And so it's about understanding that, because a lot of times we read stuff in the Bible and we read the word good, and if you lean towards the prosperity gospel, then you immediately see your mansion and your car in the word good, but that's not what God means. He actually means you flourishing in His original plan and purpose. So this, for me, that connects beautifully to what you're saying, is to really understand, what does God mean by love, by goodness, by freedom. So that's awesome. And so when you explain these things and you bring this across in your talk, what kind of mindsets do you feel you come up against that needs to be changed in the sort of average person that you come across?
I think most of the Christians, they've just never thought about it.
Okay.
Right? So we grow up with these terms. We hear them in church. We're told to love. And then we think that means accepting people. But then people start saying things and doing things that we can't agree with. So now I have to disagree with them. And all of a sudden, on that sort of shallow definition of love is just letting people be, it doesn't make sense anymore, right? So what do I do now? They're actually, or what they say contradicts something which I know to be true. So what do I do now if I love them? Do I let them just have that belief, live in that belief? What is the loving thing to do? How do I seek their good? If I love them, then I have to address that. I have to talk to them about that.
That's good.
I have to sometimes oppose what they're doing because it's not for their good. It's not for their flourishing. In fact, I would argue that's the only time you should oppose them, when their good is your sole purpose. Because see, then speaking the truth is not arrogant. It's not about you.
It's a loving thing to do.
It's about them.
Yeah.
It's the loving thing to do. And that's really, I think, in what Paul says, how you do it. You speak the truth to them because your concern, you love them. Your concern is for them.
I think the average, fairly rational person will pick up if you are truly doing it from a place of loving and caring for them. I've had conversations with people that completely disagree with me, but by the grace of God, I was able to communicate truth to them, and they were able to go, I hear you. I don't agree with you, but at least we can have a decent conversation about it. And so that happens. And I think it's about, but I feel like every time that happens, like you said, there's a seed that's planted, and you never know when that might go into a next conversation that leads to something more,
Yeah. See, because this is what we are like as human beings. Pick an animal, the lion, right? The lion doesn't have the ability to live contrary to its good as the kind of thing it is.
Yeah.
It can't choose to be vegetarian. Okay? It can't choose to go away against what is naturally good for a lion.
Yeah, he would die.
The distinction is, as human beings, we have a will, right?
Yes.
And that's where we can know the good, we can even know the truth, and we can still choose.
Will to go against it.
Not choose for a lesser good.
Isn't that what happened in the garden with the woman and the man? No, that's exactly what happened.
That's what happens with us every time we sin.
No.
We know the truth, we know the good, and we pick something which is less than.
Sure. I heard this great quote from Nicky Gumbel. He says that we swallow a lie about God before we swallow the forbidden fruit. And I think there's a lot of truth to that. When we are not completely in a healthy space in our minds and hearts about who we know God to be, then, if you doubt his character, if you doubt his will towards you, like from a context, it seems like the woman believed God was withholding something from them, Yeah. And that's why she was tempted and then crossed the line. And it's that thing of like, oh, he's holding something out. And it's no, he actually wants the best for you. He loves you so much that he wants the good. Like, I mean, all these things are coming together in that and what God wants for us.
Yeah, so it makes that, God's laws and what he prescribes to us in the salvation he offers us, it's not him sort of arbitrarily imposing things on us. He knows what we are.
Wow.
And so he knows
what's best,
what is good for us.
Yeah.
And when he says heterosexual monogamous marriage, this is how you flourish, right? Then we find that to be psychologically, emotionally, biologically the true good for us.
It lines up with everything.
Yeah, so it's not just some arbitrary prescription on our lives. It's because of the kinds of things we are. Now, can we choose to live contrary to that? We can, but it has consequences. It has consequences for our bodies, for our minds, for our societies, for our children.
And we see that. Sure.
Yeah, we see that.
Unfortunately.
And so it's actually a beautiful thing. You become who you are truly meant to be. And then you are free, right? It's within those boundaries of what it means to be human is your freedom. You can't speak of being free and you can't speak of love without speaking of what is good.
Yeah.
And I think as the church, in our conversations into the just cultural decay that we're seeing, we would do well to go back there, to ask the question, what is good for us? And why should we pursue that which is good? Because it ultimately points to God, right?
Yeah.
God is goodness itself. He is the one being that there is when we say God is good, what does that mean? Not just that he does good things for us, it means he's perfect.
Yes.
If goodness of the knife or goodness of the eye, if goodness of the human is human perfection, knifely perfection, right? Then God is that. He is that in which nothing is lacking. When we say he's good, there's no unactualized potential, there's no shifting, there's no change, there's just pure goodness.
It's the shalom, the wholeness.
Yep.
It's everything's there. Yeah. That's beautiful. Sure.
And that's what he wants for us, so that wholeness in the kind of thing we are, which is much diminished and different from what he is. But there is that sort of wholeness and goodness for us.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, I mean, one of the reasons that I'm assuming you have this talk and God put it on your heart and it's kind of, touching lives, is because there's something that has happened in our society, and that's where one of the terms I've heard you use and your husband uses, linguistic witchcraft or linguistic hijacking, where original meanings of words are completely hollowed out and it's given new meanings, or there's new words that are invented that sound exciting and different, and so words like truth and love have been redefined, or it's not well defined, and so it's kind of in the ether, and because that happens, it's possible for people to float around because there's no concrete truth behind it. So what have you seen, and what is, in a way, by saying what the truth is about these words, truth of truth, you are engaging in a battle in a way, of, it's not just semantics, it's actually much more than that.
Yeah.
So maybe just elaborate on, why did you see the need to define these terms because of what you're seeing happening in society? Yeah.
So let me just give a little bit of credit where it's due. The original idea of linguistic theft comes from Hilary Farrar in her book, Mama Bear Apologetics, where she talks about the way that terms have been taken captive. And we were talking about that one day, and a friend said, but for him it's almost more sinister. It's linguistic witchcraft. Now you look and the word means this, and then you look and the word means that type of thing. I think it's something that is important for us. It's different from just the sort of cultural evolution of words. A word meant something different 200 years ago from what it means today.
Like that's etymology and the development of a word.
So I always use the example of the word fantastic. In the Middle Ages it meant made up, and today it means great, wonderful, fantastic.
Okay.
And so that's an evolution over time where the usage changes. This is more sinister. It's when words are taken, words that are commonly used and have always been understood in a certain way, and then the definition has changed according to a specific ideology or a specific agenda. And
can you give us a example?
I take the word love, right?
Yeah. Love is love.
Love is love, yes. And so now when you come and you say, well, love means actually not this, they'll say, well, no. And so you use the term thinking you know what it means. You see love on the bumper sticker, you see love on the flag, you see love wherever, and you think, well, as somebody who's for love, I should be buying into this, or I should be part of this, or
I should be an ally.
Exactly. Yes. And the term has been redefined, and in the process of going along, you're buying into an agenda, you're buying into an ideology without knowing that that's even happened. And so for the hijacking, there's a ransom, right? The ransom is to acquiesce. You better agree with this, otherwise you're the bigot, you're the hater, you're the and where we function on campus, you're sort of the academically retarded ancient dinosaur who haven't moved on with the time.
You're not progressive.
So, exactly.
Yeah, I've been accused of that.
You don't understand the way the words are used now. And so what is important for us as Christians is these are not inconsequential terms. Yeah. They are precious. They're very important to the Christian faith.
They should be
whole
guarded.
Idea of truth. They should be fought for in our conversations. So that's one of the things that if I engage in discussion nowadays, it would be one of the first things we do. We define terms. We'll stop the conversation and say, what do you mean by that? And why do you think the word means that?
Do you refer to apologetics conversation?
Yeah, or any conversation.
You have to clarify
with people. We've got to define terms because otherwise it's useless in a sense, right? Ships passing. Yeah,
because you could be meaning one thing and I could be meaning another thing, and we're just talking past each other. It's like starting when you start a contract, you define terms.
Yes.
So you kind of have to do the same thing.
Yes, because the terms are important. They're what's going to determine sort of the nature of our argument, the premises and conclusions. We're moving in the direction of a conclusion, and we can't shift meaning on those terms halfway through. Then so
you first ask, what do you mean, and you say, what do you mean, and then you get an agreement on what you mean.
You have to agree on a definition. Otherwise, we have a prior argument to make.
Yes.
Right? Then otherwise, we've got to step back and talk about.
Let's have the prequel. We'll have a prequel argument, and then we'll have the main argument.
Yeah, and then we can.
That's fascinating.
We can get to the point where say we disagree about the definition, but then we're not going to have the time or waste the time on the rest of the argument with words that we don't agree on. Yeah.
What other examples are now happening in our time? Words that have been taken, to mean something else.
There's an interesting one, I think, within. I was on a different podcast with somebody who's more sort of theologically inclined, or within the academic circles, I think, and that was even happening when we were at varsity, is the redefinition of resurrection. Right, you had that in some of our seminaries where people would sign a statement of faith and say, "I believe in the resurrection," but then it's not a physical resurrection. Right, then it's resurrection in terms of what happens in your soul
when you become reborn.
It's more of but there's no physical resurrection, because that's resurrection without the supernatural aspect of it in terms of.
And so like the Sadducees, they didn't believe in the resurrection.
It's the taking of that term, not wanting to step out and say, we actually don't believe in the physical resurrection anymore. It's insidious. We remain within the fold. We sign the statements of faith, but actually, this is what we mean.
My goodness.
by that term.
That's the right. It's very sinister. It's like trying to pull one over on you.
Yeah, I obviously these are people who think that what they find or what they know is good for the rest of us. I don't think there's a lot of integrity in doing that. If you know full well that this is not what the rest of us mean by that term, you should be upfront with how you are redefining it.
Yeah.
You at least have the integrity to do that.
What about diversity, equity, and inclusion?
Yes, that's a big one nowadays. The whole idea of equity meaning equality of outcome, not equality of person, right? It has to be equality of outcome. We all have to have the same, which is just a disaster waiting to happen. And even the idea of justice, right? So we say social justice. What do you mean by justice? I think a lot of the definitions floating around would be something more like retribution.
Yes. Vengeance,
right? which is not justice, and so, but that as we throw out these terms, the question to your Christian listeners would be, well, how do you define justice? I mean, what is the Christian view of social justice? What do the scriptures teach on social justice? Because there's definitely a concern for that. You read Amos, you see it's all about the reason why. Israel and Judah is dispersed. It's not just idol worship, it's the lack of true social justice. It's the orphans and the widows and the poor who are trampled on.
Yeah, and James writes about it as well.
Right, James writes about
true
that.
True religion is looking after them.
And so there is a very definite idea in the scriptures on social justice, and you need to know that definition to be able to spot the counterfeits and the problems with when justice is not getting what is due anymore, but when justice becomes something which is retribution, something which moves from the point that everybody necessarily has to have the same, which is completely unjust, right, in a sense.
Let's take from the ones who have and give to the ones who don't have, and because that's just how it should be.
Yes.
And there's no actual justice in that.
And no question is asked of what is due.
Yeah.
Right. And there's a sense in which maybe those who don't have is due something from those who have, if it was taken unjustly,
yes.
right? And restitution has to be made. That's the other aspect of it. But the question underlying it is why? Why is it due? Justice being defined as to give what is due.
Yeah.
And for the Christian, of course, there's also added onto that the idea of charity.
Yeah.
And mercy, where
yes.
we go perhaps sometimes even beyond what is due. So there are all these terms that we have to fight for them, and we have to know the definitions in order to be able to stand opposed, to the way that they're used, or at least offer an alternative.
Yeah. So what would you say to a Christian audience about the importance of, getting to the point where you are certain, at least to a greater extent, of what truth is, of what love is, and then how do you do what Paul instructs? How do you communicate the truth in love? What would your advice be, or to get there and to then actually do that?
So I think to first understand that truth exists in the sense of my thoughts can correspond to reality, and as a believer, there's a responsibility on me to always be after that. There's nothing pious about being wrong. Okay, and in fact, I think
that's a good statement.
It's the social.
Sure.
It's the most spiritual thing you can do is to pursue truth, because you will be pursuing God in the process.
That's good.
Right? And so that's what we should be after truth all the time. And so that should just be sort of a discipline almost. It should be a disposition in our life. We know truth exists, and we want to know it and more of it every day. So that's the way we think. That's the way we work. That's the way we inquire. That's the way we're just interested in the world around us. And obviously that's the way we search after God.
What would your answer be to someone who... Sorry.
No.
I don't want to interrupt you. I apologize.
It's conversation.
So what would your answer be to someone who hears that and goes, yeah, but I'm more about love. I want to pursue the love of God, and they almost want to put truth on the back seat. What would your response be to that question?
Okay, so the love of who? Oh, God. Okay, well, what do you mean by that? Who is God? Well, God is... How do you know that? Okay, before we know it, what are we doing? We're having a conversation about the way things really are, and that's a conversation about truth. So you can't have the love of God without truth. Who are you loving? What are you loving?
That's good.
Why are you loving? Right.
So you're prompting to ask these questions. Yeah.
Yeah, it's two sides of the same coin.
So it's maybe we should look at the fact that Paul put them in that order for a reason. Speak the truth. In love.
Yeah, because you have to have something worthwhile to say. What's loving about speaking a lie or a falsehood?
Yeah.
How's that loving? It's damaging. It can be soul destroying. And so it's distinctly unloving to perpetuate the lie.
Yeah. What is your view on tolerance versus love? Because we get that word tolerance a lot, and I think a lot of people equate it to love and being loving. But what is your take on that?
Tolerance, I think, in its original definition actually implies disagreement.
Okay.
Right.
Because you're doing something against what you really,
tolerance means that I live with you in the space, in this community, despite the fact that we disagree.
That's a good definition.
It doesn't mean I don't have to agree with everything you say and do to tolerate you.
Okay.
Right. So when you tolerate your children, okay, it's despite those things that they do that are really annoying.
Yeah.
Maybe just part of their personality that rubs against yours. But it means there's an issue of contention there.
Yeah.
Yet we choose to live together respectfully most of the time. Or,
so you said that's what tolerance used to mean.
Yeah.
So
tolerance nowadays means full acceptance of what everybody does or anybody. You do you, I do me, and as long as it doesn't,
you do you, boo.
Yeah.
And that's a form of linguistic witchcraft, right?
Yeah.
It's moved away from its original intention. Yeah.
For it to be said, you Christians are intolerant because you disagree with whatever type of lifestyle or whatever type of belief.
We've come across that. Like agreement equals being tolerant or loving. They actually, I feel like they put it together. Yeah. Love means to be tolerant, and tolerance must be at the cost of everything you might believe.
So think about it. This is the analogy I use in my talk. If that was love, what would my household with 5 kids be like? I have to tolerate everybody in everything they do, affirm everything they say and do for me to be loving. You'd look at me as a parent and you say, you're distinctly unloving because you just let them run wild and you never tell them, no, we're not doing that. You have to do it this way, or that's unacceptable.
One day your house is burned down and someone goes, what happened? You're like, I just wanted to do that. I was just being tolerant.
That's your definition of tolerance. I agree with whatever they do.
Yeah, I'm affirming their expression of creativity.
So it's not, and I don't see that being loving either. To affirm, what kind of a friend are you? If you affirm the things that are destructive in someone's life,
sure,
just because they expect you to. It seems to me like love and true friendship is exactly the opposite. To say, I care about you enough, I care about your human flourishing enough to say, that's not good for you, and I can't agree with that. Does that mean, I want to wipe you off the face of the earth and you need to move somewhere else, or you need to be banned, or whatever the case may be? No. We can tolerate each other, we can live respectfully, but I'm not going to agree with you on this.
Yeah.
I'm not going to
say
that
should be okay.
What you're doing. I'm not going to affirm what you're doing.
Yeah.
And here are my reasons why.
And I mean, here's a question. If your social pressure on me to affirm your behavior that is against what I believe, then the pressure is actually for me to go against my conscience and against my God's word. So you're expecting me to shift heaven and earth in a way in my own life so that you feel good about your, let's call it what it is, a dysfunction. I mean, that's essentially what the exchange is, right? Would you agree with that, or am I overstating it?
Yeah, and in a way, if I'm not willing to do that, if I say, no, this is where I stand, I won't compromise on this, the question is, do you tolerate me?
Does it go both ways?
Does it cut both ways? Are you willing to say, all right, you're entitled to your view, or do I get labeled as the bigot? There seems to me right now in certain parts of our society a real intolerance,
a double standard.
Those who say, well, no, we're not going with that, or we don't agree with that.
That's my experience. That you must agree, and if you don't, then I'm gonna just insult you, discriminate against you, hate on you, and I'm right because you did that to me first. So now everything I do is okay.
And the question is, what part of that is tolerant? How is that?
Nothing about it is even in the new definition tolerant. definitely not in the old one, and it's nothing loving about it.
Mm-hmm.
But it's that crazy, unrealistic thing that we see in our world right now, that, you know, I can do what I want, but you being the, you know, it's back to what I discussed with your husband, the whole oppressor and oppressed
Mm-hmm.
class, you know, because you are what you are,
Mm-hmm.
you don't have a say.
Yeah.
You're just wrong by definition.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's crazy that what's happening. How do we as Christians respond in a truthful, loving way to a dysfunctional, broken world that's trying to steal words? And, you know, how do we have conversations? How do we stand up and make a difference, a positive difference?
Mm-hmm. So I think, as I've said before, it's really important that we know these definitions for ourselves. And if you're unsure, that you ask and that you seek, and if you come across a use of a word and you're not sure to delve into it so I think it's really important that we have that we slow down in these conversations and don't just assume that we understand what people mean. To stop and to ask the question, what do you mean by that, and why would you think that? Why do you think that is a good definition? Because often, you know, other people haven't thought about that either. They've picked it up. We do with a lot of our ideas. Simon's analogy is like a dog picks up fleas. You know, the next time you look, the idea is there, and you heard it somewhere or you saw it somewhere, and now it's part of your thinking. We're not too careful with how we come across those things. To point those out. And for me, one of the powerful things about thinking about love is always checking my heart in that. When I have this conversation, when I pursue this thought, when we talk about this, is my true concern for the good of that person? Or am I trying to just win an argument? Am I trying to just save face? Am I trying to not look stupid? Whatever. The moment the concern is for myself, and not for the good and the flourishing of that person, then I need to step back, because then I'm not doing it in love anymore. Then what I say might be true, but I'm not speaking in love. I want to win this argument, and that's not the point. So we need to. But it is part of the reason why this little talk is powerful to me. It's become sort of the way I monitor what's happening in my mind as I'm having these discussions, to stop and to ask, because otherwise we are arrogant, right? One of the claims made against those of us who want to say no, there's an objective truth, is that's just arrogant, right? But to say that you know the truth is arrogant. Arrogance is not a characteristic of truth. It's not a characteristic of love. It's a characteristic of a person, right? So so I can speak the truth in an arrogant way, and that's when it's devoid of love. When the concern is for me and for what I look like here, or for whatever cause or political party or church, for that matter, I want to perpetuate, and it's not really a concern for the person who I'm interacting with.
Sure.
And that's, I think, when we err. That's when we're not speaking in love anymore.
Yeah. Man, it's a lot to think about. And we are in this world where all these things are being challenged, and we constantly have to. I think Christians are challenged more than ever to actually think, to actually go, why do I believe what I believe? And, and I think a real question that maybe you can help us with is, what is a good resource? Because, I mean, if you just Google or ChatGPT, you might find some bad information. What is a good resource for Christians that want to grow in apologetics, understanding these things, giving a reason for what they believe, delving into truth? You say delve into truth. Okay, how do I do that? Delving into love. How do I do that? Do you have some suggestions there that we can follow?
Yeah, so I would say, for starters, start reading the Bible as if it is objectively true, in a way that says there is objective truth here. There's not just my subjective experience. There's not just good. There's an objective meaning here. So when I read about the resurrection, it's a space-time history event. Okay, so maybe what are some extra biblical evidences for this massive event? Are there any, or any people, at the time of the apostles writing about this. Paul says it wasn't done in a corner. So, and I think that's the way that the apologetic, it's reading your Bible with your mind. So when it talks about a specific place, take the map, and look at it. Those maps at the back of your Bible. If you have an old school, but nowadays they don't even put them in anymore because I think they've realized people don't look. But find yourself, and so for us to read the scriptures maybe in a somewhat more intellectual way, as if this is objectively true as well. The claims being made here, and of course you need to. Keep in mind the form of literature. Not everything is supposed to be interpreted literally. You've got to be aware of the type of writing that you're reading and that sort of thing. But I think for a lot of us, it's maybe settling in our own minds the idea that there is truth about reality to be known here. Yeah. And this is where I find it. So to read the scriptures.
So sort of check your default. Sorry. I keep doing that to you. I think you're finished and then you still finish your sentence.
Maybe it should be, so that's fine.
No, I apologize.
No.
So what I'm hearing is that we should check our default approach to the Bible. What is it? How am I approaching the Bible? What am I thinking? And, and that's maybe a good thing.
It's for me, one of the concerning things in our churches, you go to a Bible study and within about 10 minutes we're talking about what the scripture means to me. And I actually think that's to misspeak. We talk about the meaning for me. There's no meaning for you. There's one meaning, the original meaning. There's an application for you.
Yes.
Right? But the meaning is in the text. It's not in my experience or my interpretation of it. The meaning is in the actual, as boring as it is, the grammar, the noun, the verb, the order. That's where the meaning is. That's why we type messages using certain words and certain sentence constructions. There's one meaning of that, and that's the meaning the original author wrote there, and what he had to bring that across is the grammar, it's the words, right? And the context, the larger context of whatever it is that you're reading. So to find that meaning and to know that meaning is objective. That sentence means really one thing. Now, what is that application? From that one thing that we take from it, that universal truth, right? Here is my life, the stage I'm in, the things God is busy with in my life. How does this apply to me, this truth? But I can't come and say, reading scripture through my subjective experience of it. There's first an objective meaning. And it's worrying for me that I think in the church we jump too quickly to what is really application, and we say we misspeak. It's maybe not the intention, but this is the meaning of the text. No, that's how that text applies to your life and where it's significant to you. But the meaning is what that author wrote originally and what he said by it. And so we can be a little bit more objective in the way that we study our Bibles, knowing, and this is important, that because those words can be defined, and that's why you do well to look at the Greek, and nowadays it's easier than ever to look at the lexical meanings of those words and to consider them, and to move from a place where we know that there's objective reality there, there's an understanding, there's truth, and then we move to the application of that, which is personal and subjective according to where we are in our lives and what God is busy with in us. Then I think one of the things we found, certainly in our Christian, our ministry towards students, that's been so helpful, and it seems distinctly unspiritual, is a class in formal logic. Basic.
A class in?
Formal logic.
Formal logic, okay. All right.
Logic as a discipline. It used to be part of school education.
Which makes sense. Yeah. Thinking the right way.
At the age of 12, 13, students were exposed to classes in formal logic where you come to know and understand an argument. You come to know and understand human thinking, the way we move from one idea to the next, and how we do that well, right? And this is not pagan, although the Greeks were pretty prolific in being able to word what is really a human endeavor, to recognize what it is that our minds do, and then to describe that to us, because they didn't make it up, they just sort of said, okay, this is the way we do it, and you read it.
Thinking about thinking.
Thinking about thinking.
Yeah.
And thinking about thinking well. See, it's sort of, you're going to do it anyway. Question is whether you do it well or not. Right? And
if you're aware of what you're doing.
Of what you're doing. And there are better and worse ways to think. And that impacts the way you read the scriptures, right? So you think of Paul's epistles. Those are really arguments, one after the other. This, therefore that. For this, therefore that. Those are premises and conclusions all the way through.
So
if
important.
you read Jesus' discussions with the Pharisees, it uses logic, which is really the art and science of human thinking. We've lost that, and it seems like a distinctly unspiritual thing to do, because we think that what is intellectual is not spiritual, and it's just wrong.
Sure.
We need to know the truth, and we need to love God with our mind. So I would almost, and there are good resources for this from obviously a Christian worldview, which what's nice about that is they'll use the examples from the scripture, and you'll train in the use of logic, and you'll train in the use of reason using Paul's good arguments, and they'll just come to life in a completely new way. And that's also for parents who are raising up kids, if you want to embolden them in the culture that we're living in, the best thing you can do is to teach them to think well. Because then it doesn't matter what the argument in their time is going to look like, what the lie is going to be. I think by the time our kids are adults, social justice will have run its course. We're going to be sitting with the mess that is going to leave us. But there's going to be something else, something new on the horizon. I don't know what it is.
No.
I can't train them up in it. The next wave of false doctrine is going to come. How do I equip them? By teaching them to think well, loving God with their minds, using that mind that God has given to them, which is part of their human nature, using that well for His glory. And so, I would encourage people, and maybe there's a little bit of a personality thing going on there as well, in terms of those of us who are more analytical, but we all think, and we can all do with thinking well. And so, that would be... it's one of the things that we find most useful in terms of our student ministry. It's the thing they come for. 6 o'clock on a Wednesday morning is the logic class.
Okay.
Because it changes the way you have discussions, it changes the way you write your papers, it changes the way you read the scriptures.
So that's something Ratio Christi does, or is that
not at all the chapters? It depends. It's something that just happens eventually, because you tend to move. The talks and the discussions tend to move in that way, and the students will then pick up what, there's something missing here in the way I'm expressing myself, or I see something in the way that the speaker expresses himself, which makes sense. I like that. It resonates, I think, with our sort of nature in that sense. And then we tend to try and help them.
I do think we've lost a healthy sense of logic in our, just general. And I enjoy logic. I really do. And one of the things we started doing more and more at our church is to read the scriptures verse by verse, chapter by chapter. And there's something that happens when you do that. The context livens up. It brings life to the whole thing. And exactly what you said, you notice the for, therefore, because referring back to what was just said. And it's really arguments being built, because this is true, then this is true. And if this is true, then, and because that happened, then you should, and you go, oh my word, this is brilliant. I mean, Paul is brilliant at that. And whoever wrote Hebrews, some people think it's him, brilliant at that as well. Coming from a Jewish perspective, writing to Jewish believers and just building the argument. Jesus is greater than the angels. Jesus is greater than Moses. Jesus is greater than the priest and the sacrifices, and blah, blah, blah. And then, building up to faith. It's just it's such a beautiful thing. And I mean, my mind is fully engaged and my spirit. And it's a beautiful thing. So, and I find that that's what you're talking about, is we should get to that place where we both are engaging with God.
Yeah, I think that's crucially important. You can't check your mind at the door. And I think for a long time the church has been doing that, right? We've been hoping that sort of overwhelming people emotionally with beautiful music, with fellowship, with kindness, with all of those things are good, but you can't do that in opposition to their mind. You can't leave that part out of it. It's an extremely important part of what it means to be human, is to be intellectually satisfied or to have good reasons for doing things, right? And if we're not willing to give those, I think we're actually going counter to Paul's instruction. We're supposed to be able to give reasons for the hope that we have.
Do you think the move in the sort of general church to a more emotional experience is because of some damage that has been done in the past, where there was a lot of truth with not enough healthy love? So people kind of swung the pendulum to the other side.
Yeah, I think that's possible. That's always
or at least part of the
a
reason.
possibility, part of the reason. I think some of it goes back a long way in terms of the sort of greater academic and philosophical conversation that was going on. If we think that we can't know truth objectively, then I think instead of battling that idea, the church perhaps retreated into saying, well, my faith is a distinctly subjective experience. And so what do I need to do to evangelize or to get to people there? Well, I need to give them the same subjective experience. And so we focus on their experience. But you're right, there is also, if it becomes just a sort of stocky exercise of the mind, that's not good enough. The demons know. It's not just about knowing the truth. It is also then gearing your will towards it, and to say, I will live according to what I know. And that's the hard part.
Yeah. Because I deal sometimes with people who they sit with what is now known as church hurt. And there's church hurt with people who come from very traditional reformed kind of churches, where they were just hurt in some way by the religious side of it, where you have to, and this is the truth, and there's no other way, and whatever it might be. And then you also have people who got hurt in the more, let's just, for lack of a better term, more charismatic, let's say feely churches, where they were abused. They were emotionally abused or taken advantage of, or they thought one thing, but because there was no foundation, they've realized, man, I don't know what I believe, or whatever the case might be. There's different versions of that story. And I find that, to help people, a lot of it has to do with just anchoring them in the truth of the Word of God, and to ground them, so that there's, Paul says it so well. I think someone like James as well, we can be like we can be tossed to and fro by the waves, or we can be on the rock. And I think it's about helping people to get on the rock. And I think that's what you guys do so well with the students that you work with, and with the talk that you do, and that's what I want to do in a way through this podcast, is to help people to be able to stand and not be thrown around with, but what do I say to this person, and what do I say to that person, and is this loving, or the truth says this, and this is the struggle, because a lot of the criticism that I get is that, Heinz, but you're not being loving towards those who don't believe what you believe. And I said, how so? And then they would go, yeah, but you're not tolerant, you don't agree. I'm like, yeah, I don't agree, but I still love that person. It's actually because I love that person that I'd like to share the truth with them. And I don't maybe do it always right, but that's the motivation, is to bring that across. And so that's why I love these conversations. I've learned so much from you today. What would your final, well, actually, two more things before we say goodbye. Because I know you and your husband are passionate about this, and these are two words that have also, I think, been hijacked: marriage, family.
Yeah.
So we see that this has been eroded and being attacked, actually. But God had an original plan, and it hasn't changed. I remember listening to your husband the first time and he used the term creation ordinances. I was like, what is that? I need to know more. That's awesome. And I learned so much. And just maybe your take as a wife, as a mother in the world we live in, advice on, marriage, family. How should we see it and how should we live it out in the times we live in?
I'll maybe say two things. The first is that these ideas that we've spoken about in terms of truth and goodness, and then love within that, is really, I think, helped me to realize that in this pattern which God sets for us, He has our good in mind. There are obviously many different ways in which we can choose to live. But when He says at creation, this is how we come together, this is how we procreate, this is how we live as really communities, right? It's good. It's for our own good. And if you look at, I would venture to say, I'll be bold and go and say, all of the social evils that we are dealing with in this country of ours, the answer is almost always faithful, heterosexual, monogamous marriage, family, right?
Amen.
The symptoms are all because of the collapse of that.
Yeah, fatherlessness, broken marriages.
There's even a sense, scripture aside, just on a sort of a natural law view of things. How do you, if you had to write a plan for what a healthy society looks like, I don't think you can come up with a better one. It's what safeguards us against all of the social evils that we're dealing with. Now, that doesn't mean just because two people are married and there's a family, it's going to work that way. It's healthy family, right? We have
that's very important.
Married families that are, and they're never going to be perfect because they're imperfect people in them. Yeah. But as we tend more and more towards God's original plan for that, it's the best way. It's the good way to live your life. And I think if we're honest with ourselves, that's really what we desire. And a lot of the things that we're struggling and having to deal with is the fact that we didn't have that desire fulfilled when we were little or when things went wrong and so on. So I just think it makes sense. And then the second is I really think this is how the church is going to be relevant in what's coming. We're going to see complete social collapse with the way things are going. And the church will have to be the infirmary. We're going to have to pick up the pieces. We're going to have to take in the broken ones. Because when you mess with that original design and you mess with that goodness, there are real consequences. Yeah. There are real health consequences. There are real emotional consequences. There are real social consequences. And I'm
sure you already see that with the people you help with. And,
we all do. I mean, the students, it's so odd to me. They'll come. When we came, our big idea was all this intellectual stuff, this information and the arguments that we're bringing. A lot of them come for family. Sure. They'll pitch at all hours of the day to come and see what we're doing and to hang out and to drink tea and sit in front of the fire and
just be in a healthy environment.
Be in a healthy environment,
sure.
which is it's scary because you're being watched, and you might be the first example that they have of a somewhat functioning marriage.
Wow.
But that's what the church will need to be. Yeah. That's what we're going to have to be in the society that we're in. It's going to be our major form of outreach is to pick up the pieces when things start falling apart, and not in a sort of I told you so kind of way, but in a we know the healer, he's healed us, come
and from what you're saying, as the church we can kind of see what's going to happen. And I mean, I know some Christians who will listen to you and who might go and say, no, speak life, and you're like, you're not speaking death necessarily, you're just going, I see the signs and I can see where this is going, and if people keep making the decisions they're making, there will be real consequences. And rather than going like this, the church should be going, let's be ready. let's be ready to receive them. And I mean, this is something that my wife and I share with you guys, is a passion for healthy marriages, healthy families, because we know that builds a healthy nation. It's just the way it is. And that because it is God's original plan, and there is no other way. And I find it so funny when I speak to, when people observe what we do as a church, and they go, "Oh, you're the marriage and family church." I'm like,
right.
Is there anything else?
Yeah.
You know, that's my question. Is you know, why would we do any? Sorry, why would we be anything else? Is that's God's heart. But I mean, obviously, that's part of my passion. So you would have some people who are like, they're more missional, or they focus on the widows and the orphans, and we each have our passions. But to me, it's like, it's so much my passion. I don't see how that cannot be a focus.
Yeah, well, I think everything else to a certain extent is dependent on that, right? How do you do widows and orphans if you don't have healthy families within your church? How do you do missions if you don't have healthy families from which to send the missionaries? When I do my talk, I list some of the falsehoods, I think, that are our waves, our doctrinal waves. I think one of them, and I might be crucified in the comments for this, is this idea that it takes a village to raise a child. It's wrong. It's just flat wrong. It takes a family to raise a village. The reason why we need villages to raise our children is because the family's failing, right? You go ask any grandmother who's living in a township having to look after grandkids because the family has failed, whether she thinks this is the way things are supposed to be. It's the way things are being done, and God love them. They will get crowns in heaven for what they're doing. They are a saving grace right now. But is it the ideal? Is it the way things are supposed to be? No. So I think
you just had
wrong on that.
You just had a mic drop moment. Please say that again.
I don't think it takes a village to raise a child. It takes a family to raise a village. You want a healthy village, you must have healthy families.
Wow.
Your village will fall apart without that. And I think you find that in all cultures. It's not village first. It's family first, and then you have a healthy village. You have young men who are raised up to lead. You have moral conscience. You have economic viability. When those things are taught from a young age within a stable family.
Sure.
That's where that's the mini society, right, in which we prepare them in safety with discipline and with moral coaching, with intellectual upbringing to be part of the greater society. And if that doesn't happen, what are you sending into greater society? How are you going to build? So
that's amazing.
It's crucial.
That's so good. I'm going to change my language. You challenged me. I love it. The family should be the core. That's influencing the village, the community. Absolutely. Amen. Thank you for that. I love it. That's so good. That's what we need. I mean, if we look at our country, you mentioned our nation earlier, and I've been having a lot of conversations about our nation. I believe we have so much potential. We can be so much better as a nation, but we are rotten at the core. And how do we fix that? So we sit with symptoms that need fixing, but then we have root causes that needs to be addressed and completely overhauled. Like the system we're built on is not healthy. So your focus seems to be on addressing root issues in your ministry, but we do need to have a double approach to this. We need to, there are people who are broken who need healing, and then we look ahead and we're like, well, it's better to raise a healthy person than to fix a broken one. So, just as a final thought, how do we do that as a nation? How can the church play a role in that? You've kind of answered that in a way, but just as a final thought, what would your challenge be to those who are listening and want to make a difference?
Yeah, so I think it's really important that, was it Mother Teresa who said, you want to change the world, go home and love your family, right? So for the church, that's really important. We can't be preaching marriage if our own marriages are falling apart. So it's important that we get our house in order when it comes to these things, and then we move from that place to invite people in, to take in the broken, and that's the order. And then we raise up a generation for who these things are important and who will be able to be the counterexample and the counter voice in many of these things. So it's important that we not just raise our children within family context, but that we teach them that family, for us as believers, has priority. For us as a society, really should have priority, and that we make sure that they perpetuate that they want to have healthy families. That's something that they strive for. I think that's how in a way you break the cycle, or you start a new one, a counter one, which people can join. Sort of it's the Celtic way of evangelism. There's a little book that looks at how the Celtic tribes in Ireland especially were one. It wasn't through conquest. It was monks who went and set up first a church, and then a hospital, and then a hotel on the way that people were traveling, inviting people into that community. And before you know it, the whole of the pagan village had just sort of shifted to where there was the safety.
That's brilliant.
There was this community where there was Christ. And I think that's the type of generation we need to raise, is the one that will come alongside the brokenness and say, you're welcome here. And not just you're welcome here because we are broken too, because there's a danger for that, right?
Yeah.
The broken helping the broken, then you really don't have anything to say.
The blind leading the blind. Yeah.
Yes, you are welcome here because by God's grace, there's a different way.
Yes.
And so I think that's part of the way we do it. But we certainly can't presume to fix what is broken if we're not at the place where that can be done. And that's what you see. That's what you see in the good intentions of some of our social justice warriors, right? They want to help, but you got to be in this place of brokenness in order to help. Well, it's not really helpful, is it? It's from this place of brokenness that you want to help the broken. You don't really have anything to offer, but let's just be broken together, and at least there's camaraderie. And the question is, well, what do you have to offer? What is the alternative? Where do I? How does it look different in so many years, or for me personally? So I think for us, it's as Christians, whenever we do the talk on family, we always end with a reading through Colossians 3.
I love that chapter.
One of those
so
places
powerful.
Where Paul does the therefore, and then talks first, about those personal things, the anger and the malice and the impatience that we lay down and the things we take up, and then moves into the structure of the family, the roles of a husband and a wife, the obedience of the children, how we work, and doing it for God's glory. That's what it means to be a bit of a rebel nowadays, right?
Yeah.
Colossians 3, you want to
you
want to be countercultural, live according to Colossians 3.
Sure.
I think that's our mandate.
I love that chapter. I'm thinking of that rock star Alice Cooper. He said, it's easy to trash a hotel room. If you want to be a real rebel, love Jesus. Because he came to Christ and he had quite a radical encounter. But I recently spoke on that chapter and with a message called put off, put on. Mm-hmm. There's some things we have to put off. And there's a part we have to play. I think some Christians wait for God to do something miraculous with something that God has already asked them to do. We have to put off some stuff and we have to put on some stuff. And it's a act of obedience and by faith, and we walk it out. And there's a call, on our lives to come up to where He wants us to be. Because that letter was written to Christians. Mm-hmm. I think sometimes we miss that. Yeah. You're already saved. Now this is what you need to actually trust God for. It's part of your road of sanctification. Yeah. So I'm in total agreement, and I think you got a brilliant plan. I wish you and your husband can be our presidents.
No.
But just in principle, that would be amazing. Mm-hmm. But I think that's so helpful, and I think we need more of that. And my final question, with that in mind, what you just said, do you think there's hope for our nation?
There's hope, right? There's resurrection hope in Jesus. Hope. Hope for our nation, that's going to depend on what we do, right? whether we follow him. That's different from the Christian hope. There's always the Christian hope.
Yes.
The Christian hope says that's the remnant, even if Judah gets deported and taken away, if we've crossed the threshold of God's judgment. And I have to say I wonder sometimes.
Yeah.
The thing that probably makes me wonder most is our abortion statistic.
Sure.
If God is consistent in his character, then at some point
he
has to say enough.
Yeah, there'll be judgment.
Yeah.
Sure.
But the Christian hope remains the same, right? Then so if we're sort of like Habakkuk, we're crying out and we're saying, we just see injustice, Lord, where's the justice? And then God says, I'm bringing it, it's the Babylonians. And Habakkuk's like, what?
Can we have it in a different way?
Let's have it in a different way.
Sure.
So
that's a good point.
Either way, if God is gracious to us and we're moving into a sort of, there is for us a King Josiah who rebuilt and smashes the high places, what that might look like for us if we do get righteous leaders who make good decisions, then as a church we stand. If we don't and the judgment comes, then even it's what Daniel's friends say, even if he doesn't choose to save us, we will not bow the knee.
Yeah.
Here we stand, and we trust. It's that beautiful piece in Jeremiah 29. Everybody always reads verse 11, but you read the rest and you see this is written for the remnant. This is written to those who end up in Babylon, right? What does it say? Plant your gardens. Plant your gardens. Marry your children off. Be family. It's what that passage says to the remnant. You live here as my people, in whether it's under the yoke of the oppressor or whether it's in freedom of a place where good decisions have been made and God's will has been sought. Either way. So yes, there's always hope. Whether that means there's comfort and prosperity. I think those are two different questions.
Yeah, because ultimately, like you said, there's human will, and I believe our nation can be so different if a lot of stuff falls into place. And in the meantime, I think as Christians we should do everything we can with what God has given us to make the difference where we're at.
Yes, where
like you said, starting at your home, into your community. Do what you can. You can't, from where you are necessarily go change the nation as a nation, but you can change your household. You can change your street, your community, one step at a time. Yeah,
that's what Michael Cassidy says in that movie on the miracle of the South African democracy, where he says, you do your bit. That's what's required of you. There's, at the Wilberforce Academy, it was beautiful. I think you were there that year when... what's his name now? A professor from England did the devotions with us and spoke about King Josiah specifically.
Beautiful.
About him reading the prophecy and realizing it's too late. The judgment is coming. Sure. And he tears his robes and is in sackcloth and ashes. And then he gets up and he continues anyway. Yeah. Right. Powerful. And that's what we do. Why? Because God should be obeyed. It's how we worship him. Yeah. And we continue doing that despite what goes down around us. We pray and we work towards, his goodness and his kingdom wherever we go. Sure. But there's hope despite the way things turn out.
And I was thinking about Josiah, and I think there's another similar story of another time where the word of God was discovered after it had been neglected and read aloud, and then everything changed. And that for me is a great principle. Let's read the word of God. Let's believe the word of God. Let's bring truth to light, and that can shift everything. I mean, I've seen recently now how just the preaching the gospel changed young people's lives who were so desperate for truth, who were throwing their lives away, And we have to contend. So thank you for what you're doing.
Oh, you're welcome. It's my privilege. It's a blessing, and just grateful to the Lord that we can be part of his work. Simon has a little story that he tells about living in the US, and we were cleaning the fireplace one day, and little Eva, our oldest, was maybe 2, and she wanted in and cleaning this fireplace. And she was working in exactly the opposite direction, making a huge mess. And I was sitting there watching them, and Simon was getting a little annoyed. And then all of a sudden he just went quiet, and he turned to me and he said, this is God and us. Huh?
Sure.
He's saying, sure, we make a bit of a mess. But he allows us to do it. What a privilege. And so I think to honor him in that way, and he's using us, but he's also working in us at the same time. It's a tough but beautiful and necessary process, and all glory to him for sticking it out with us.
Yeah, absolutely. Sure. Can I ask you one more question? Do you have a message for Christian women on how to navigate this world of where feminism is, shoved down your throat, and you kind of confronted with all this right stuff, but the Bible teaches something completely different as for the role of a woman next to her husband and her role as a mother. Do you have a message for, because I can't speak directly to that with the same authority as a lady that has walked the road and has read the scriptures and has loved her husband, loved her children. There's a healthy way that is intended, for a wife to come alongside her husband, nurture her children. What would you say to that? For the women of our time, how do you live that out? Because what I'm seeing is ladies getting, older and not getting married. Young couples choosing to not have children because there's this mindset. What would you say to young Christian ladies and even married, wives and mothers on that topic?
Yeah, so we spoke a little bit about the idea of being human, being a certain kind of thing, and there being a good within that, right? So there is I would say, although we're human, which is by the way where the equality lies, right? It's equality of worth. There are things that are distinct, and I would venture to say, even on the level of our very nature, our being, the ways in which we have been created for distinct purposes. So when there is this idea, and it's the taboo word, right, the submission word, the thing to remember is this is a relational submission. It's not a submission in terms of one is worth more than the other. It's not a subjugation, the one in power over the other. It's a relational submission, meaning in order for this relationship to function well, in order for this entity of the family to function well, I'm willing to take on a certain role and not another role, certain things. And I think there's a sense in which that's just necessary in any type of relationship we're in, right? We expect that of our children. We expect that of our employees or our employers. There's always a relational submission of some sort happening within our society. So this is not a uniquely marriage or uniquely then sort of Christian way of doing a relationship. It's a human way. We're all willing to step back on certain things or take the lead in certain things because this is how we move this entity, whether it's the family, whether it's the business, whether it's the parent-child relationship, forward, right? And there are better and worse ways of doing that. So again, when I see the scriptures talk about those distinct roles, it's not arbitrary in the sense of, God sort of saying, okay, you will do this and you will do that because I said so. It's because it works.
It's what's good.
It's what's good. It makes this entity move forward. And certainly for me, on a personal level, I think the Lord was maybe gracious to me in the way that He kept me from some of the ideas I traffic in now, or some of the areas in which I find myself now, keeping me from that. When I was at university, I would have made a beautiful feminist. in maybe the not so beautiful sense of the word beautiful. I would have fit that bill perfectly. And graciously, even though I was teetering often in terms of friendships and places where I found myself on there, he he kept me from that. And looking back, I've often wondered, why isn't that I didn't tip over? It was the example of my own family. I couldn't believe that all men are trash because the men in my life weren't.
Wow.
My father was a good man.
Yeah.
My brother had been raised to be a good man. I was blessed having uncles and cousins around me who were good men, people in church. And so it was impossible for me to say they are all necessarily oppressive. I saw the type of leadership in my home where my mom was secure because of the leadership that my father took.
Wow.
My mom was valued as a person. Her ideas were considered, despite the fact that she was not necessarily the one who made the final decision. And so I saw that healthy balance. And so when the ideas came, that was what I measured against. And my thought was, well, hang on. It's not. So you see how important that family example is. So if we have examples of healthy submission, if we have examples of healthy relationships in which the biblical roles are fulfilled, then it becomes what we measure the worldly ideas against, and they will fall short. When you meet the feminist, there's a certain resentment, there's a certain anger. For me, what is sad is there's almost always a certain sense of exhaustion, right? Which
because they're outside of their role.
It's just not appealing. No. It's tiring to think that you can have it all. No, you can have what is for you according to your kind, right? There is no freedom in moving outside of those boundaries. Now, what those look like, of course, there are conversations to be had about that. But I certainly in my life, I have found my freedom in terms of the expression of who I am in Christ exactly when I'm obedient to those things. It's the paradox. The freedom within the constraints. That's where you find it. So that certainly is my testimony. And again, it's one of those things for which I think there's just a natural argument to be made. There's no question that the early involvement and nurturing of a mother within the life of her children is just crucially important. All of the sociology points in that direction. How can the mother do that when she is safe within the provision and the protection of a husband who creates the space where that can be done?
So good.
And there's all of the statistics, right? If you want to go there, and the sociology points that way. So again, it's not just the sort of arbitrary rule, law that God plonks down on us for, I don't know, making life difficult for us. Makes sense. It's good for us. When it says that the ordinance of the Lord is good, the ordinances of the Lord are good, that's what it means. It's for our flourishing. Yes. So there's something also distinctly, when 2 Timothy says she will be saved through childbirth, there is a part of my sanctification as a believer which was dependent on me accepting God's plan for the way things are to be done. God could do certain work in me once I accepted that. And it was tough for sure, but it's beautiful.
But that's the dying to self.
Person for it. Yeah, and it's
dying to flesh in the world.
I would venture to say, it's as tough for men to step into what it is that they are called for, and as it is for children who are believers, right? They're also required to step into a certain role as a believing young person. So we all, but in that unique place, there was a certain work that God did there, which would not have been the case had I not been willing to submit to that. And He's faithful in doing that. It's not just arbitrary making life difficult for us. It's all about growing and flourishing and glorifying Him, which is our good.
I love it. Thank you so much, Nel, for sharing your heart and your passion and just teaching us so much. I can hear there's still so much more that, from the well of knowledge that you have. So thank you for that. I learned a lot. I was blessed by that. So thank you, and may God bless you, your marriage and family, and your ministry. I'll put some details in here about what you guys do and where people can link with you. But thank you, and God bless you, and may you see more beautiful testimonies of the work that you're doing in your lifetime.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for watching this episode of the In Hindsight BOLDCAST. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope it empowered you, equipped you, and at least made you think about a few things you may not have thought about before. We want to encourage you to leave a comment, subscribe to the channel, like this video, share it with as many people as possible, and check out the other videos on this channel. There are some amazing conversations that you may not have heard yet from people that you may not be familiar with, but that have amazing things to share with you. So make sure you go and check them out. We also want to encourage you to go out and be bold, stand for the truth. Do not be ashamed of your biblical or more conservative worldview. It's time to stand up. It's time to speak up. Remember, boldness is contagious.